Hey everyone, welcome to Vertical Film School. Today's guest professor is Sophia Singh. Sophia is a Princeton Computer Science graduate, former head of product at InWorld AI, and former product manager at Google. She's now the founder of Plot Party, an agentic AI platform that's rewriting the economics of vertical drama production. Studios using Plot Party are producing 5 episodes per person per day at less than 10% of the cost of on location filming. She is also an angel investor backing the next generation AI companies in entertainment, and she recently co hosted an event with Machine Cinema, World Labs, and Rosebud AI, where teams created full narrative video content in under an hour. If you want to understand where AI and vertical drama intersect, where the intersection is heading, she is one of the clearest thinkers in the space right now. So, students, pencils down, phones up. The professor is in. Sophia, welcome to class.
Thank you for having me. Great to meet you, Chi, and great to meet you, everyone.
Awesome, Sophia. So, Sophia, let's talk a little bit about your origin story. You were head of product at InWorld AI. You worked at Google. You went to Princeton and MIT, two of the most difficult and most challenging and most prestigious schools there are in North America and, dare I say, in the world. What made you look at the vertical drama space and decide this is where you want to build your platform next?
Yeah, I would say for me, taking a step back, my education has always been in STEM, right? CS, AI, big data, a lot of stats work as well. But my personal interest has always been in entertainment. I was a very artistic child growing up. In college, I spent most of my time singing, dancing, and managing a photography agency. So I've always been interested in thinking about if is it possible to merge my professional interest with my personal interest in the arts. And microdramas is a really exciting field, I think, because it's an art format that really stemmed out of the audience. It's one where everything that's being produced is heavily reliant on the data and who is watching and what people like to watch. So the art form, actually, if you think about it, it's an evolutionary organism on its own that moves a lot faster than some of the longer form, whether it's shows or movies that are screened on the big screen. And I'm ethnically Chinese, grew up across Australia and the US, but I've been following this global movement of microdramas and how different locale, different markets actually have different content niche for this art form, which I think is always really exciting, is how can media be personalized and how can media be for the people. So started really looking into this starting from last year, have been watching a lot of microdramas to understand what are the trending topics and why the art form works. And there's a lot of wisdom and formula, kind of formulaic success that's in the field as well. So overall, I think it's super fascinating. And also, not to mention, the economics of the field is really interesting because you're starting to have these studios that in the past weren't really in the industry trying to find a place. You're starting to have a lot of individual script writers, a lot of independent actors. You're having a lot of smaller studios that can produce, best viewed dramas, and overnight it would be a success. So all of that is also very fascinating to me.
Oh, okay. And we'll get to talk about the economics later and the production. So I just want to make a note of that. But yeah, I find it interesting that people come into this space at different times in their lives or based on different interests. So for me, I've always been interested in media. But last year I was reading, I think it was Business Insider, one of the newspapers, and I saw microdrama. And I was like, what the heck is a microdrama? And then that got me on like losing 2 weeks watching Real Short and a couple other platforms. And I was like, okay, yeah, I think this is what I want to do because I've always wanted to work and do something in film. But I was like, yeah, I enjoyed like growing up in Nigeria. We used to get like in the 90s, we used to get like all the American soap operas, but we didn't get them all like Dallas, Dynasty, and whatnot. So I was like, I really enjoyed this because it's like, it's interesting. You get to follow it, and then I do hate the fact that this is one of the triggers of it, but the cliffhangers on every episode just is so annoying that you keep having to spend. I think the economics needs to change a little bit, but it's like that's what really hooks people from across the world to like keep watching these things.
For sure. It's all about human psychology. At the start of it is, what are the very specific type of dopamine hits that resonates with a certain group of people. And for every group, it's different. It's funny. I was talking with our executive producer a few days ago, and we were talking about how, growing up, we both really loved reading classics, Jane Austen novels, Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, and we're saying how, now a lot of the very popular common themes in microdramas is about romance, specifically some power play, right? A younger, more innocent person ending up with someone who's a mafia boss, or someone who's, a lot older, has a lot of wisdom. And we're seeing the parallel between that and a lot of Austen's themes from back then, because that's what Emma is, that's what Pride and Prejudice is. And these themes that resonates with people, what they like to watch, what their daydreams are, has not changed for centuries.
Very true.
It was the same in, back then in the 19th century. It's the same right now in the 21st century.
Very true. So Plot Party is described as an agentic AI platform creating vertical dramas. For someone who has no idea what that means, how would you explain it, what it actually does in plain English?
Yeah, so vertical dramas, two ways that you can make it, and it's kind of a spectrum. You can either film with people with real sets on location, or you can make everything using AI. And of course, it's a spectrum, so you can do a little bit of both. You can do some filming and round out some of the shots with AI. For us, our platform is on the end of the spectrum that's completely AI, and we really believe in the future of AI in filmmaking, specifically drama making. I've been monitoring and tinkering with the models for the past year or so, and the video models have improved to a point where, to the audience eye, in a microdrama format, is almost indistinguishable between a AI drama and a on-location film drama, which is very empowering, because then if you think about the types of genres that can be created, the types of teams that can create dramas, that completely changes the game. So Plot Party, what we do is we have a platform that makes AI drama creation the easiest, where you don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to go to 10 models. You don't have to, have a manage your storyboard elsewhere. Everything is done within our tool, assisted by AI agents. So specifically, someone can come in, they can have a script, or they can just have an idea, and they ask the AI agent to help them build out an episode. The AI agent will help them in any of script writing, character design, set design, shot design, animating the shots, stitching everything together. The agent can do all of the above. But if the human wants to come in and change any parts of it, if the human comes in and thinks, so the human can come in, and if there's anything that the human wants to change, like tweaking the character a little bit, changing some of the shots, re-angling some of the shots, having the dialogue change in a certain way, all of that can be done within our canvas as well.
Oh wow, interesting. And when it comes to costs, I know I spoke about it at the top of the interview. It seems like using Plot Party drastically reduces the cost, because now you can do a lot more with the workflow in terms of not only creating the scenes, the sets, animating the story itself, but also like contracting production, right? Have you found that a lot of studios are actually using it in combination with live on location filming versus just let's make this with AI alone?
Yeah, so yes, some teams are using it for sure to complement live on location filming, but there are some challenges, specifically with the rights of actors, actresses in a live filmed production, right? Even though, say, if you're missing a shot, or if you need some kind of shot, even though it's entirely possible after the fact to just take someone's image and generate the shot, in the actual contract with the actors, actresses, in most cases, you're prohibited from doing so after the fact. So you're only really limited to what's actually being captured on set. So right now, what I'm seeing people do is, for certain shots that involves no humans, that maybe is like a helicopter landing or aerial shot of the city, those types of things, or power shots of cars crashing, because it's expensive to crash cars in real life, but it's entirely possible to do it with AI. So I've seen most of that being done. I've seen some generation of backdrops and casting it on green screens for on-location filming. I've seen some of that being done. but largely I would say there's more there's more attention and experiments in people who are trying to explore actual fully AI native dramas.
Okay. And one of the biggest challenges in making AI dramas or AI generated videos is character consistency across episodes. Because
Mm,
I've seen a couple where the character is holding something, all of a sudden it disappears, and I know it's not necessarily the the animator's fault. It's just basically what the model created, right? So when it
yeah.
comes to using your platform, how do you how does it ensure that continuity is maintained across different shots and different plot points?
Yeah, so on the foundation of how we make these episodes, we
Mm-hmm.
first actually map out who the characters are, what the locations are, and why are they the way they are. So for the characters, we actually map out, what their voices are, what their personality is like. So actually between shots, we try to hold not only the visual of someone consistent, but also what makes them the way they are consistent. So if you think about it that way, then the way that someone would walk up to, or the way that, say, a gentleman would walk up to a lady, if they're
Mm-hmm.
a timid person versus if they're a more arrogant person,
Mm-hmm.
all of that would be different, right? It's not necessarily something that's written in the dialogue, but in how you're designing the shot, how you're animating the shot, all of that is really important. So we first actually hold the core, what we call the core metadata of every single element in scene still, in addition to the visual characteristics. And then what we do is for each one of the shots, we try to make sure that we are pulling these themes and elements in the best way that we can, both from a model selection perspective and also from a prompting perspective. Our philosophy is, as a drama producer, it is not necessarily the onus of learning models and how to work with models and what are the new models that are the 10 new models that are coming out in the past
Mm-hmm.
month. That onus should not be on the drama producers. That onus should be on the platform. And we try to learn the best practices and we try to automate as much as possible. So then for someone who maybe doesn't really know which models they should use to ensure visual consistency, can do it easily within our platform.
Okay. So now brings me to my next question, which is basically, does who is the person to use this platform, right? Because is it now like an animator or an editor or somebody on the crew that already knows about filming? That person now has to learn AI and put that in their workflow, or do they need to
Mm,
hire an AI native um, creative to just come and work on that specific piece? Because if it's
yeah,
the person who's always been doing film in their life, having to learn a new AI workflow is going to take some time, right?
yeah,
Versus if it's somebody who just learned this stuff in the last year or 2 years, let's say, it's much more easier. So where does
yeah.
using platforms like yours sit in the workflow of a production?
Yeah, so we're designed in a way that anyone who has a creative eye can produce an episode. There's no need for you to be an AI expert by any means, although it does
Okay.
help. If you are an AI expert, you'll know better about what are the things that you want to tweak. But for anyone who is new to AI, as long as you have a creative eye, as long as you know what you're looking for, as long as in your mind you have the radar for what is cinematically good versus not for the specific use case that you're trying to build for, you can use our tool. I actually had a user who was building a consumer application that has nothing to do with AI video, but they
Mm.
wanted to add some elements of video in the consumer application to make it more engaging. And I gave her access to the tool, and she was able to make some really awesome videos very rapidly. And she had never really generated any other AI content outside of this. So I think that's the benefit of an agentic approach as opposed to just a workflow approach.
Okay.
A workflow approach requires you to choose which models you're trying to use to stitch together the workflow yourself, and to, in most user interfaces, to connect a lot of nodes with edges towards each other. Whereas for us, it's more led by the agent.
Okay. So now that brings us to the cost of this, because if you're working with like AI and agentic AI, you're going to have to be paying lots of money, right, to run API calls or buy tokens or just keep the whole thing going, and that tends to add up real quickly. A lot of some of our productions in vertical dramas are already very budget conscious, right? So when
Mm.
it comes to like using AI models and whatnot, does that mean the budget has to increase when you're making a production, or how does it fit into the whole budgeting of a particular drama?
Yeah, for sure. The budgets actually significantly decrease if you're using AI versus on location human driven filming. Just to give some perspective, right now, call it within the US or continental Europe, call it every episode requires several $1,000s to be made.
Mm-hmm.
Just in general,
Mm-hmm.
but if you were to do it using AI, it's usually a 2-digit, at most 3-digit kind of cost, depending on what
Really?
models you want to use. So on our platform, if you were used to use the cheaper models and to just generate a basic story, you want to animate a story, maybe have a voiceover, to get to a 1-minute clip, it takes about $10 in
Oh,
credits,
wow.
and then you can already get to a 1-minute clip. Of course, if you want to do something that's a bit more involved, that's using all of the best models, the cost can go to $50 or $75, but that's still a fraction of what it would cost an actual crew cast post-production team to be able to do a on location drama.
Okay. So now let's put it to you as the guest professor, right? If someone listening to this is contemplating, right, they have a tight budget, they want to make their
Mm,
first vertical drama, and they want to incorporate some part of AI because they don't want to get rid of actors. And of
mm,
course, I think fans these days are actually, what I say, preferring to keep real actors versus using AI generated
mm.
actors, right? So, how would you guide that person to onboarding AI into their production
Yeah.
workflow?
Yeah, I would say there's two ways to think about it. You can think about it from a cost reduction way, or you can think about it from a genre expansion way.
Okay.
So on the cost reduction way, really is to map out all the shots that are currently costing quite a bit of money, and most
Mhm.
of these are power shots, or it can be panoramic shots and things like that, or it could be it costs a lot of money to actually design a certain set that you had in mind because it's something that's difficult to find. Whatever it is, as long as it's something that doesn't involve a live actor,
Mhm.
it's for sure something that can be automated using AI. And it's also something where if you are exploring having a green screen and having some mixed filming techniques, it is something that you can consider just permeating your entire production.
Mhm.
If all the backgrounds, all the backdrops are generated, and all your filming is kind of in a studio with a green screen, you can definitely consider doing that as well. So on the cost reduction side, I think AI approaches is definitely already additive to most microdrama studios that are producing out there. The second part is I think is more exciting is the the microdrama space is also getting more and more saturated with content that is largely
Mm.
similar. If we think about the content formula, if you think about the way that actresses look, right, it is starting to become more and more homogenous
Yeah.
for reasons for the right reasons, because a lot of people are watching these, and for
Mhm.
platforms, it makes a lot of sense to keep on investing in those kinds of dramas because that is a proven success. But from an individual studio's perspective, if you think about the potential payout, the potential viewership you can have on each individual drama that you're producing, then it also does make sense to think about how can you actually expand the genre and go into ones where the drama that you're producing is actually so differentiated from everything else out there that other platforms are more likely to license and potentially pay a higher fee for it. So some genres today that are not very frequently done, not a lot of heavy action is frequently done, not a
Mm.
lot of sci-fi, it's definitely
Mhm.
no horror, not a
Yeah.
lot of period dramas, not a lot of fantasies being done. And all of those genres, the reason why they're not being done is because it's expensive to film 100% in
Yeah.
person. So you
Yeah.
can also think about what genres can you actually invest in, and how can you use AI to complement that genre in a way that it wasn't possible before.
Yeah. Because I mean, you can only do so many billionaires, and
Yeah, yeah. And also billionaire storyline. If every platform has billionaire storyline, it's going to start to get boring.
yeah. To be perfectly honest, there are really not that many billionaires in the world.
For sure.
Although that's the entry point that got me into it, since I'm a business grad from school, but
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not really realistic. They're not that many billion. They are rich people for sure, but
Yeah.
not everybody is like a billionaire working in the gas station who 10, 15, 20 episodes, you're mistaking him as the janitor. No, that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So when it comes to like taste, right? Because that's one thing. A lot of the time you can have the tool, but you may
Mm,
not have the taste to like produce what you want. How does taste play a significant role in terms of like making the production or an AI powered production much better versus just like
mm,
relying on, take for example, so to use the real world now, most people, because we've been watching movies for so long, if you watch a movie long enough, you say, oh, this is like a Steven Spielberg movie, or this is a
mm,
Scorsese movie, because you know that
mm,
thing you can't sense, but you know it's their signature is always there, right?
mm.
So how can someone using AI put that same taste or that same touch in a production so that it's like unique? So you don't want to have the media you create just looking sterile and highly polished and whatnot. You
Yeah.
still want it to have something where it's like intriguing and it's pulling people in. Is that still left up to, let's say, the director or the people that actually working on the film versus finding
Mm,
an AI powered creative or an AI native creative to now
mm,
learn about taste and make those intangibles enter into the movie or the
mm.
series?
Yeah. Um, I would say taste or director specific taste in microdrama has not yet been proven. We haven't really seen any microdramas or any very emerging famous directors that have a specific style when it comes to microdramas.
Mm,
But if we look in parallel to the traditional film industry, if we think about the types of directors that have very strong personal characteristics, Nolan, S. Anderson, any of those, it usually comes down to two things. One is pacing, one is visuals.
yeah.
Either you have a certain visual style that is just so different from anything out there, from the way that the shots are being shot, from the way that the colors are being shown. Either you have some visual differences or you have some pacing differences. And I would say using AI, visual differences are a lot easier to achieve. Specific visual characteristics a lot easier to achieve
Mm,
than pacing characteristics, because image models today are way better at prompt following than video models. I mean, makes sense. Video is much harder. Video, essentially moving images, is much harder, right?
for sure.
So today, say if you are someone, a director who thinks, hey, I want a very specific way that colors are arranged in all of my shots, it's entirely possible using AI, using Plot Party, or
Mm,
just directly prompting the models, entirely possible to have that style transfer. So if you are the next Wes Anderson, you have a certain color scheme, it's very possible for you to do that. But for pacing is actually quite difficult to just rely on the models to do it. So for pacing, I would say the taste is really, really important for the person who's actually making it, whether it's a director, whether it's a AI artist, to control the pacing and keep on generating until you see something that makes sense, that really fits the idea of a certain way that shots should be paced and dialogue should be paced and things like that. And of course, editing is also as important as ever. A lot of people think, well, if you can just AI generate everything, do you still need editors? My answer has always been yes, editing is
for
more
sure.
important than ever,
Hmm.
because now, instead of all the shots that you're being limited to all the shots that were filmed, you can actually replenish shots as you're editing. So in a way, the editor actually has a lot more power than before, where
Mm,
they're kind of restricted to that specific set. And editing is so important in microdramas. I think everyone who's in the industry doesn't need me to stress that.
yeah,
It's a very specific type, a very specific cadence, a very specific type of art, and editing is so important.
yeah. So when it comes to distribution globally now, because I know a lot of microdramas, well, I would say the industry started in China, right? And
Mm,
then it's now come to the US or North America in the last 2, 3 years or so, and it's going viral around the globe, India, Latin
mm,
America, Africa, and whatnot. Now, is it easier to leverage like an AI platform like yours to
Mm.
enhance localization? So when I say localization, I'm not just thinking about dubbing it into the local language, but more like, helping to make the story more
Yeah.
native to the culture it's going to be filmed, is going to be broadcast in.
Yeah, I would say localizing, if we're talking about full localizing and not just the dialogue, right? If we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the people, the context, the dialogue, the set design, and all of the above, um, I do believe that it's a net, it's a much better and easier path to just create a new one using AI as
Okay.
opposed to trying to adapt, every single scene, every single frame to it. Um, what is interesting is, when Real Short and Drama Box first came to the US a couple years ago, before all the English native content were generated or were produced.
Produce.
Actually, most of the content on there were just dubbed, or in some cases not even dubbed. There were subbed Chinese dramas,
Mm-hmm.
and culturally, it's not something that's super relevant. There's a lot of period dramas set in past dynasties that to most Western viewers, for sure, it's a very foreign concept, right? But that being said, people are still watching it
Watch it, yeah.
because the underlying themes are similar. The
Yeah.
underlying themes are, you build up to this point, whether it's a revenge, whether it's a romance, becoming fully realized. You're building up towards that point. And I would say for anyone who's trying to adapt a drama to a local context, as long as you understand what are the points that you're trying to optimize for, what are the content threads that you're trying to build, using AI, you can very easily build a net new one. You can, from an idea, you can easily write a set of scripts. Of course, you have to review it a little bit, and you can easily turn that into a drama. So if anyone's thinking about, hey, I see, call it American Sniper, that's working really well in the U.S. and European population. I want to
Mm-hmm.
adapt it to another country. Then why not just make a new one?
Yeah. Makes sense. So now, as a CS grad, when you look at the underlying models and where they're headed, I mean, there's been so much dramatic improvement in the last, I won't even say 6 months, I'll say in the last 2 months, right? So in the
Mm,
next 12 to 18 months, what are some capabilities you think that will develop that'll
mm,
enhance what people are doing right now with AI models and
mm.
platforms like yours to create video?
Yeah. So we are on the application layer. We do some model post training, but our bread and butter isn't to train the next best foundation models.
Mhm.
Between I would say US and China and a few other countries, there's a 10, 15 or so very well funded, highly capable companies that are competing in the model race, and it's a very competitive race.
Mhm.
And the future of what this is going to look like is there isn't going to be one state of the art best model for everything.
Mhm.
Every model provider is going to continue to push on the niche that they want to win, whether it's a certain style, whether it's a certain length, whether it's a certain cost, return over investment profile, whatever it is, these players will continue to push. But what we'll definitely see improvements on is we're going to see some players pushing on longer form generation. So
Mhm.
right now, the longest in most cases 15 to 20 seconds. We'll see certain players pushing towards a 1 minute mark. Um, we'll see some players trying to push on the controllability point. So right now, we're having some of these reference to video, we're having some of these multi-shot kind of prompting capabilities that wasn't possible before, and we'll definitely see some players really making the dials a lot more granular, so that someone who has very specific ideas can control the models better. We'll for sure see some players pushing on the cost point and making a relatively decent generation a lot cheaper than before. So you can imagine that would be very beneficial for certain types of dramas where it
Mhm.
doesn't really matter if you have the highest res or the best lip sync. So that's something that's possible. We'll have certain models that are pushing for less represented faces or elements being more front and center, as we're
Mhm.
already starting to see with some of the more local models performing better than some of the models that are trained on the entire world's population.
Okay. And Plot Party is a team of what, 2 to 10 people right now. You're a smaller
Mhm.
team, you're a more
Mhm.
nimble team. How do you compete against bigger names in your space, given the fact that it's not only the models are kind of available to everyone, but also you
Mm.
need funding to train, to modify and to make it more
Mm.
specific, and to also market and bring in people, because you're coming into this particular space, right, which is
Mm.
vertical microdramas. Other
Mm.
people are like, hey, we're going to work with YouTubers, or we're going to just work with people who want to just create videos. So how do you guys try to navigate the competitive landscape of being an
Mm.
AI video platform, but also trying to like carve your own significant piece of the pie?
Yeah, so we're 100% in AI microdramas, and the fact that microdramas are and movies are so different, and with different creators, different ecosystem, different best practices, different ways to film, cast, edit, it really shows that this is a very different content format that requires very specific tools that are
Mm.
optimized for this format. So we're not trying to say, hey, we want to compete on every single vertical. We're not trying to do ads. We're not trying to do a lot of these other things.
Yeah.
But microdramas is something that, from a application and also from a model post training perspective, we are 100% trying to optimize for. We had some studios try our tool, and it's funny, they as they're trying it, they're like, oh, it would be awesome if we can have this specific part of the workflow. And I tell them, yes, it's already in there, because the 5 studios that have tried our tool in the past voiced those feature requests, and we ended up building it. And yes, that would only be relevant and helpful for microdramas, not really for any true AI Hollywood filmmakers. But
Hmm.
we have in our platform things like having a character change costumes, things like continuing a 1 minute episode with all of the elements held consistent for the next episode, things like rapidly creating 30 to 60 episodes from common elements. All of that are things that isn't really relevant to other art formats, but for microdramas it's really bread and butter. So for us, that's something that we're focused on, and actually not that many AI companies are focusing on this area. A lot of folks are still focusing on Hollywood.
Hmm.
A lot of folks are focusing on animation, but for us,
Mm.
it's really about microdramas, human realistic microdramas.
Okay. And for someone listening to this and they're starting their own production company, or they have launched a production company and they're saying, hey,
Mm.
I want to actually experiment with this. What's the lowest friction way to get started? What should they try first or explore? Is it maybe they should start creating images first with, I don't know, Mid Journey or something before they move on to like a video platform like yours? What's the
Yeah.
first couple things they should do, at least to get their feet wet?
Yeah. I would actually recommend to try out Plot Party. We give free credits to everyone to try, so you can actually generate a story without video, but the images within a story with voiceover completely on the free credits that we offer to any new users. And it takes about 5 minutes to generate a story end to end. So you can go in, you can type your story, you can give it a shot. I think it's very beginner friendly.
Mhm. So, Sophie, as we reach the final few questions of the podcast or the session in class, I'd like to ask you just a couple winding down questions. And the
Yeah.
first one would be, you've been in the space for some time now. What do you think is most surprising since you first started out till now that we're in March? What has changed since you first started out in the space, given when you launched and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I first started in this space a while back, and so many things has changed. Um, but I would say the willingness of creators to adopt AI has really changed in
Okay.
the past half year. The willingness of traditional filmmakers, traditional drama makers in looking at what AI has to offer. A year ago or 2 years ago, there was a lot of skepticism, and there was a lot of existential discussions on is this still filmmaking, is this still like is this going to replace a certain part of the workforce. And I
Hmm.
think now a lot of people are looking at it from a more of a how can this help me and help those people that I'm working with in making things better perspective. And that in itself is very refreshing, right? You're seeing folks that are jumping head first, 100% AI production, everything, and they're still using their traditional filmmaking training in making things better. You're seeing people who are trying to adapt a little bit of AI into their workflow, and being open about the enhancements in efficiency that they're having while understanding what the boundaries are. I think that's starting to look really interesting, and I think within the next half year, the attitude that Hollywood has on AI is going to the mainstream attitude that Hollywood has on AI is also going to start shifting, and that's going to trickle downstream to any creator in the arts and how they think about AI.
Okay. And in terms of like the work you guys do with, creating these models and helping to build
Yeah.
these worlds, do you get a lot of resistance from people saying, hey, you know what, you AI guys are, trying to put us all out of business simply because it's easy for you to train a model, create these things, and then now all of us are scrambling, figure out what else are we going to do for work? Do you get a lot of that kind of resistance?
Actually, not so much. What we definitely still get some comments here and there,
Mhm.
but I think as more and more creators are realizing that, hey, this technology is actually empowering the masses. It's actually empowering anyone who did not have resources to create something. Now they can. It's
Mhm.
empowering people that are living in countries where traditionally there isn't a film presence to be able to make things. I just got off a call with one of our awesome creators, and he lives in Poland, and he makes the greatest sci-fi creations just from his own studio. I think the more people see examples of these artists taking off, they realize that this is actually democratizing something that is core to humankind. We all want to create. We all have stories that we want to tell.
Mhm.
We all have an eye for what's beautiful, for what's compelling, and there's no reason why that should be gatekept.
Can you tell us where people can find you and reach out to you if they want to learn more about you and Plot Party?
Yes. I'm Sophia at plotparty.ai. And you can also go to plotparty.ai to try out our tool. And I can also share the links with you, Chi, afterwards. So if you want to add it to the posting.
Yes, I'll definitely do that. So thanks a lot for coming to share your story and for teaching us how to use AI in making vertical dramas, Sophia. Appreciate you taking the
Yeah,
time today.
thank you for having me.
My pleasure.